Have you ever had that feeling, that prickly sensation on the back of your neck when you're the only one in the house, but you swear you're not alone? It's a feeling that's hard to shake, the kind that makes every creak of the floorboards sound like a footstep. We've all been there, right? Turning up the TV just a little louder to drown out the silence. Or maybe jumping at a shadow that turns out to be nothing more than a coat hanging on a door. It's easy to laugh it off in the daylight. But when night falls and the world outside goes quiet, our homes can transform. Familiar spaces become unsettling, and our minds start to play tricks on us. Or do they? Tonight, we're diving deep into that very feeling. We're going to explore some of the most chilling, unexplainable stories from people who were convinced they weren't alone in their own homes. These aren't just spooky campfire tales, they're personal accounts that will make you question what's real and what's not. So, lock your doors, check behind the curtains, and get comfortable. We're about to explore why you should never, ever stay here alone. Let's start with a story from a user named Clara, who was house-sitting for her parents in their old Victorian home. She loved the house, full of memories and character. But she'd always felt a certain cold spot in the upstairs hallway, right outside her childhood bedroom. Her parents always dismissed it as a draft, but this one weekend she was there by herself. It was late, around 2 a.m. She was watching a movie downstairs when she heard it. A single, slow, deliberate footstep from the floor directly above her. In the hallway, she froze, muting the TV. Silence. She told herself it was just the house settling, the old wood groaning, but then she heard it again. Creak, a pause. She never stayed in that house alone again. What Clara experienced is a classic element of these encounters, the auditory hallucination, or what paranormal investigators call a disembodied voice. It's one of the most common and terrifying phenomena reported. But what happens when it's not just a sound? What happens when you see something? This brings us to Marco's story. Marco was a college student PTMG for his final exams. He'd pulled an all-nighter and was the only one left in his shared apartment. His roommates had all gone home for the weekend. Around 3:30 a.m., bleary-eyed and fueled by caffeine, he got up to get a glass of water. As he walked PTM the dark living room, he saw something out of the corner of his eye. A tall, thin figure was standing in the corner of the room near the bookshelf. It was completely still, a silhouette darker than the surrounding shadows. Marco, a wave of pure, primal fear washed over him. He couldn't scream, couldn't move. He was just frozen, staring at this impossible shape in his living room. He described it as feeling like had slowed down. He stood there for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 10 seconds. Then, as slowly as it appeared, the figure seemed to dissolve, fading back into the shadows until it was gone. Marco didn't sleep. He turned on every single light in the apartment and sat in the middle of the floor with a baseball bat until the sun came up. He later found out from his landlord that the previous tenant of his apartment had passed away in that very room. Coincidence? Maybe. But for Marco, it was proof that he was not and had never been truly alone in that apartment. These figures, often called shadow people, are another recurring theme in paranormal encounters. Skeptics often attribute them to pareidolia, our brain's tendency to see patterns, like faces or figures, in random stimuli, especially when we're tired or scared. Your brain is on high alert, and it can misinterpret shadows, coats, or even flickers of light. It's a survival mechanism. But can it explain the sheer detail and the intense, paralyzing fear that people like Marco report? The feeling of being observed by something intelligent. Let's move from seeing and hearing to a more physical experience. This story comes from a young woman named Aisha. She had just moved into her first apartment, a small studio in a converted factory building. She loved the industrial chic vibe, but the place had a weird energy. One night, she was asleep in her loft bed. She woke up suddenly with the distinct feeling that someone was in the room. Her eyes darted around the dark space, but she saw nothing. She tried to roll over to go back to sleep, but she couldn't move. It felt like a heavy weight was pressing down on her entire body, pinning her to the mattress. Panic set in. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. Her breathing was shallow, and her heart was racing. Through what's known as sleep paralysis. It's a terrifying but medically recognized condition where your brain wakes up before your body does. The part of your brain that paralyzes your muscles during REM sleep to prevent you from acting out your dreams is still active. This often comes with a strong sense of a menacing presence in the room, and sometimes even visual or auditory hallucinations. It's your brain trying to make sense of a terrifying situation. But Aisha's story has a twist. As she lay there paralyzed and terrified, she felt cold fingers gently brush the hair away from her face. It wasn't rough or violent. It was a slow, deliberate, and chillingly intimate touch. This wasn't a vague feeling of a presence. It was a physical sensation, and that's what makes it so hard to dismiss. After a few seconds that felt like a lifetime, the pressure lifted, and she could move again. She scrambled out of bed, turned on the light, and found nothing. But the feeling of that cold touch lingered on her skin for hours. So, what's the takeaway from all of this? Are our homes secretly filled with unseen entities, or are our minds just incredibly powerful at creating fear? The truth is, it's probably a bit of both. Science can explain a lot. Old houses settle. Our brains misinterpret sounds. And conditions like sleep paralysis are very real, but science can't always explain the feeling. The sheer gut-wrenching certainty that you are being watched. But maybe, just to be safe, you should turn on a few more lights. Or maybe just don't stay there alone, ever. Thanks for joining me on this unsettling journey. If you have your own story of a time you weren't alone, share it in the comments below. I'd love to read them. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more dives into the unknown. Stay safe and check your locks.